Hello, everyone. This is Lark,
And Kimberly.
and this is auto asphyxiation. It is April 20, well, it's April 21st, 22nd. We'll say, because we always kind of publish on Tuesdays, but we do publish sometimes before we do a pre record, all that stuff. Sometimes we're live, sometimes we're not. But we won't let you know when that is. Um, so this weekend was the second protest, and martial law wasn't called because that was kind of the whole thing. Like, we can't do a second protest because martial law is going to happen. And I mean, here's the thing. Some part of me feels like some people were like a little bit of BS. Like, they just didn't, they were unhappy that April 5th went off so well, and they didn't want another successful. So instead of being like, hey, I'm unhappy because this didn't go right, and I don't like how you guys are protesting, they're just trying to make you afraid, like an abusive spouse. That's not what I feel like. You're like an abusive spouse. Yeah, if you try to go to college, you're just gonna fail. Yeah, if you go out there and do your little song thing, everybody's gonna tell you that you suck. That is what it felt like to me. Not everybody, but with some people, I got this vibe, and that's not really even the topic of this conversation. The topic of this is we're talking about non-violent nonviolence as a strategy for a protest. And it's very weird because it's like, well, of course, the people who, a lot of people who are abusive, who use violence to get their way with their spouses and their children and the people that they lord over, they also try to do the same thing with this protest. You are going to be abused. And so they were just kind of like, this isn't really a real, I call it, they got their Hanes Fruit of the Loons in a bunch. Because I think for some reason the strategy should be from like, we're at zero, sitting on Facebook or, Blue Sky, and we should go to 100 and just all of a sudden just start run, go, 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 go. In regards to Saturday. I'm gonna, some of the people had negative things to say, like the protest wasn't real, it wasn't an authentic protest. But I'm gonna read one of our Blue Sky people that we hang out with, not hang out with, but he's a person that we follow here. Doc, he says, look at these people. Are any of these people prepared to die and watch their family members die? No. So don't demand that of them. The little 4-year-old girl holding the "He ruined Home Alone 2" sign, is she a pawn in your game of online activism chess? That to me just really kind of like, it really made me think like, wow, like what exactly is the goal here? Is the goal is to actually to transform our system, not to just destroy all this. So, or I don't know. That's what I thought the goal was. Kimberly, what are your thoughts on this topic?
I thought that like what Doc wrote was very, very powerful. Like that really did completely loop it into just one easy phrase. Like, what is the goal with your acceleration? Because so many people are going to be hurt, and we're not talking about that enough. And I think that the protests were, I think they were powerful. I think they were loud. I think that they were very varied. They were creative. There were a lot of different tactics that I saw, like people forming things on the beach and taking like drone shots of it and stuff like that, that I thought was really interesting and very creative and cool. And I think that it's telling how many different kinds of people are coming out to these protests. There are a lot of older people coming out to these protests. So I think based on that, I think it's successful, and I think that it's creating the necessary conversations going forward.
I think the thing is that, we have to think about strategy. I think a lot of times people feel that strategy has to look one way. And in some ways, like, nonviolence is a strategy. It is not a moral preference. A lot of people kind of think it was about morals. I don't like violence. I'm like, no, this is a strategy. And I think that some ways I feel that the reason why this protest might make people feel uncomfortable is because it's part of, I just kind of thought about this, it's part of another conversation that we kind of don't have. When we have a protest, oftentimes it's a historically excluded group or a marginalized group that is kind of like, please don't hurt me, et cetera, et cetera. And the responses to the protests look a lot different. This one has a larger demographic, and that demographic in the United States, the largest demographic is white. In regards to a cultural group. Now, here's the thing: people kind of go, "Well, there are a lot of people of color, but the people of color that's a whole bunch of groups. People of color is a whole bunch of groups, and white is a group. So white is still the one of the is the largest voting group, and it is the largest group. If we're going to separate by culture or ethnicity, it's the largest group in the United States. So I think maybe people are uncomfortable about the fact that, wow, it seems like when this plurality of people, that it has a huge number of people that are part of the largest group, whether it be like baby boomers, white, in the urban areas, but it's like even in the small areas, it's a lot of people. Like, it's a 4 million people. That's not a small number. And the thing is that when you can get 4 million people out, the protests are going to be looking a lot different than when you're having a small, historically excluded group. And maybe that is what people are kind of uncomfortable about. But it's kind of very strange because the people uncomfortable seem to be white men, which doesn't make any sense. Because I could see if it were like historically excluded people kind of going, well, when we went out there, we got beat up when we went out there. But this is why are white men still upset? Like, is it like, are they kind of like, are they getting to see like, wow, like you're really not scary at all? Like no one, or people are actually scared of you, or I'm not really sure. I'm kind of, I don't know why I brought that up, but
that's it. They're a confusing demographic, really, because like they just seem to be across the board, like political divides aside, they just seem committed to being angry at no matter what. And I don't understand that. And it does seem to be like a certain age group also, like there were a lot of like old white boomers that I saw in pictures from protests, like especially in like more traditional red areas. There's been big protests in Sparta, in Sussex County, which is cow country. Like, so I don't know. I don't know why they're like just angry all the time. Like,
and the thing is, we're both Generation X, and we're noticing that Generation X men, and this is, I want to call it the nativist in regards to like third, fourth, fifth, 10th generation white and black Generation X men seem to be the most annoyed of what's going on. And I don't know, maybe we have to have one of them on here so we can have a conversation. Like, what's up, man? Like, what's going on with you? This is working. This is actually working. It takes time to build institutions. We're not going to be, this is like, in order for us to be in this kind of like, neoliberal prison took time. It didn't happen in one election. It's been building. It's been a 20-year project. Actually, think about it, it's been a 40-year project. So one election, two elections, because this is, one election, two elections, one protest, two protests. It's going to take time to build this. And here's the thing: when you have, they actually have done studies. They have done studies from the 20th century, the 20th century, 21st century, and essentially says that nonviolent protests. This is Chenoweth and Stephan did a study, and they said nonviolent protests have significantly higher success rates than violent ones. And, especially when the protest is essentially, by the dominant population, which would be here would be like white people. It would be, those kind of protests, kind of like when you have the general population, the population that is empowered, when they kind of go, no, we're not doing this anymore, the protests work. So why are we having a problem with a strategy that we have data that shows it works? So is the thing really? It seems like, do they want it to work? Maybe that is the problem. Maybe that's what we are not getting. They don't want it to work.
I think you really, you nailed it. They don't want it to work because it's not what their idea of revolution is. And like, it's, if I can use an analogy real quick. So like when the Star Wars sequels came out, the fanboys, the Star Wars fanboys were big mad about the Star Wars sequels. And they were mostly just irrationally angry that there were women in lead roles. It's like they didn't watch the originals. But and it has no point to it, and all it does is scream into a void and like alienate a whole category of people that might otherwise be interested.
No,
Like,
this is
I,
yeah.
I still like it. Just, you're just screaming into a void. You're just yelling at people for having a good time and enjoying something and having some hope. And it's just so, it's, I can't find the right word for it, but it is just so weak, really. I guess is like, it just shows how weak and ineffectual they really can be when they're just like, they're scared of women in powerful roles in media. They're scared of like regular people and like normal common people getting out and protesting and having some hope and talking about it and enjoying themselves. It's not what they wanted to see. It's not what they wanted to see in the Star Wars sequels. It's not what they want to see as far as protest and revolution in the United States goes.
And I think another interesting thing about it is that, we see, when the Black Lives Matters protests happened, they were by far very peaceful, and the police were like busting up, busting heads, like arresting people, doing like really violent things. And the response to the police, the response by the police now, there are a lot of factors. Number one, the police are actually being come for it too. They're like, we don't need you either. But also, it kind of like makes you think about the whole class reductionism type conversation when it kind of goes like, oh, we're all the same. This kind of points to possibly we are a little different in regards to what the state views us as. And it kind of disrupts this whole idea, because I guess one of the things was we can create more solidarity if we pretend that racism doesn't exist, if we pretend that sexism doesn't exist. And this is showing, wow, the state acts a lot different when the actors are different. Like when we have a community of predominantly white people who are at the protest, it's different. And it's like, instead of us talking about that, it seems like some people seem to be getting annoyed with it. But it seems interesting that it's not the people that you think would be annoyed with it. You would think that it would be people of color. You would think it would be like we're transgender people, but it seems to me it's like disproving this whole like, oh, that like, I think in a way, how can I try to say this? It seems like it's showing, wow, working class white people do have power. It's not just this thing where it's kind of like, oh, we don't have power, we should just give up. It's like, whoa, the government will listen to us. Because actually, really, before 2000, before the Telecommunication Act of 1996, like your grandmother, your mom, our parents, they really believed my vote makes a difference. I'm gonna go out there and I'll make a difference. But up around 2000, after this perfect storm happened, it was kind of like when Gore when the election was stolen from Gore, and it actually was, people were kind of like, oh well. And it's like, I don't think our grandparents would have been like, oh, okay, cool. Like, but we had already been prepped with the whole.
I
Go ahead.
they absolutely would not have been. Oh well, I remember my was bombing Libya in like the late 80s or early 90s, and my grandmother, I was upset. I was a little kid. My grandmother was like, write the president a letter right now. Like, she was serious, like my grandmother, my grandparents, they felt like they could do something if they wrote a letter or made a phone call. And that largely evaporated in the early aughts.
Yeah, I think it really did evaporate in the early aughts. I think in a way there is this weird twisted, and here's the thing, I wasn't even thinking about this. It's like this weird twisted thing where you can kind of lift up a historically excluded group and say, see, they don't have any power, and you can go, you're just like them. See, you don't have any power either. So this country's just a piece of crap. No one's listened to. But when you see what's happening with today, to me, when you see what's happening with these massive protests and you see the state literally respecting the people, like, oh, we better not do anything, it shows you, wow, we do have power to make a difference. We can do something. And you know what? We should probably fix the whole racism thing too, because wow, think how much more powerful we would be if we listened to everybody. But it's kind of unfortunate that kind of had to be segregated from this in order for people to see again how much power that they have. And I wasn't even thinking about that, but I was thinking, yeah, this whole idea, I think that the general population, the majority, the dominant population hasn't really gone out in a while. But the thing is that they did go out. The New Deal, the New Deal that happened. People think, oh, well, that happened because President Roosevelt was such a good man. No,
no.
Absolutely, did not happen. Great grandpa went out to the White House, was like, you better fix this today, or this place, fix it. And it wasn't, and there's a thing too, as you see, there is no thing about violence. It was like, they just went down like, hey, you need to fix this. And President Roosevelt was like, okay. And it wasn't like, oh, the opposing party. No, it was, they went to the people who were in charge, who were actually in charge of the government, the person who was the president, the executive branch, and our House of Representatives, and said, you need to fix this. They weren't like, well, we can't go talk to them because, they're not the political party that we are part of.
That's something that I also have noticed in the last 20 years, is that people don't engage. There's a separation between our elected officials and the people, and it shouldn't be that way because they work for us. They make our money and they are our employees. Even people under a monarchy can petition to have a visitation with the king. Why can't I go and talk face to face to the president who makes my money and puts it in his pocket? I don't care what Trump fucking does with his supposedly giving his presidential salary away. Why can't I go and talk face to face to these people? Why can't I just show up at an office? Why do I have to go through hoops and like all this bureaucracy and red tape? They work for me. They're my employee. Even if they're on the opposing side, they're still my employee if they're in my state or if they're part of the Senate.
No, that's the thing. I'm just kind of like trying to, it's like, we a lot of people have this conversation about how they hate the duopoly, blah, blah, blah. They're both the same. Okay, they're both the same. If you agree with that, then why are you not talking to Trump? Why are you not demanding things of Republicans? Why are you kind of like only talking to one party? I can't even imagine, in the 20th century, in the 1900s, I can't believe in the 20th century, whether it be 1910 or 1970, somebody being like, well, we can't really deal with this administration because that's not the party that we're registered for. So we're just going to let them screw us. And we're going to call our person, in our little bitty town or whatever, we're not going to talk to the president directly because they're not the same political party. Okay, look, if they're both the same, if say you believe they're both the same, I do not believe that, but say you did, why is it so hard for you to tell this current administration, what you told the prior administration in regards to, I need you to do this, I need you to do this. Here's, I need you to not violate my rights. I demand you actually uphold the Constitution. You promised, you had an oath. This is, and there's this weird thing that I literally do not understand. That would be like, you being married to somebody, um and then you going and talking to their aunt or something, and then telling them like, could you tell my spouse to be nice to me? Like, but you're married to that guy, so I don't understand like what is going on. Not saying they're married to Trump, like, ooh, that's kind of weird, because now we're all into this whole, he's trying to bring in weddings and marriages and all this stuff. So I mean, that's kind of like what I'm doing right now. But I don't understand that.
When we were talking about like it's disrupting the status quo that has existed for the last 20 years. People expect like the people expect people like you, people like me, but I'm seeing like old guys with beards and bald caps and flannel shirts, like, and what that does is that it creates a conversation at work on Monday. And that conversation creates more conversations. And it's when you're getting like your older people, when you're getting like garden variety Republicans versus, these MAGA cult people that are coming out, it's unexpected and it's getting noticed. It's getting noticed from the people in their communities. It's getting noticed from the people at work, at school, like mom groups, etc. So these are see how change happens.
Yeah, I really do. I really believe that there is a change happening, and I feel that this shows that there are multiple ways that you can become successful. And essentially, I was reading a lot of things, kind of saying like, well, nonviolence is kind of like you're actually subjugating yourself or something like that. And I'm like, it is not. I feel that there are many strategies, and there are many ways to get things done. And sometimes, here's the thing: we are essentially, we are powerful as a group. We're powerful. We don't need to have. We don't. I mean, when you have so many people, you don't really need to resort to violence. Violence is something that you kind of have to do when you're a smaller group. It would make no sense to do it.
Yes.
It's just logic wise, it just doesn't make any sense. No one's happy with what's going on. You could be in Iowa, you could be a farmer, you could be working for the government, you could be, a Republican, you could be a Democrat, you could be at the Green Party. You can't be happy that they're taking away your disability, taking away your Social Security, essentially destroying the dollar, destroying your ability to travel throughout the country, telling you got to get like this in order to fly, you have to have this, that, and the other, essentially putting tariffs on things. No one is happy with that. So we don't need to, we're not a fringe group. We're everybody. It's us. Like when we have the protests, it's like, go ahead.
Everybody.
Yeah, hands off us. Hands off.
I don't like, I feel like it's not like disciplined nonviolence. It demonstrates a tremendous amount of courage because you are standing up to an overly violent machination of the state and the way that the state moves its violence over people. When we look at like history, like there's, the lone man, you always see the picture on Facebook and other social media, the lone man who not sig heiling in a crowd to Hitler. Like the man that stood up to the tanks in Tiananmen Square. Like these are powerful examples of nonviolent protests that we look to during times like this. We look to those figures. So no, nonviolence is not cowering or cowardly. It is very, very powerful because the state is violent and the state expects you to act as violent as it is.
Exactly. And I think this is like, something we have to do. We have to practice strategy because they're waiting. They don't know what to do. It's kind of like, I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you've gotten into an argument with someone and you don't respond the way they expect you're going to respond. You respond kind of like with kindness, or you respond by just kind of just looking at the person because they think you're going to go off on them. And that really kind of gets people off their game because it's kind of like, okay, well, when they do this, we're going to villainize them, and then we can show that they're crazy and they're totally unreasonable. So if you don't give them that, I'm not saying that's why you should do it, but I'm saying they don't have a strategy other than pounding heads. And the thing is that if you are already have not, if they haven't, the society hasn't been prepped as to be demonized because you're not a historically excluded group, you're not a marginalized group. They kind of can't really beat on you because you can't beat on grandma, right? That's gonna look weird. You can't kick grandpa down the stairs. You can't start taking we call a baton against a little blonde 4 year old. You can't do that. It's globally, it's going to look poorly on you. And this is why they're trying to dehumanize the people who are they're taken to El Salvador, trying to humanize them, trying to say, oh, they're not people, blah blah blah, they're criminals, etc., etc. But I'll tell you this: even if you are a criminal, that shouldn't happen. You should have due process. Criminal, not criminal. I don't really want to go into the,
Process.
yeah, exactly. I don't want to go into this whole, well, they're actually really good people because even if you were a bad person, you shouldn't have to be a better person because you're not white. You shouldn't have to be a better person because you're not an Anglo-Saxon. You shouldn't have to be better in order to prove your humanity. Everybody, just because you're born, you're a human, and you should be treated with respect. And I think that that's something that we really kind of like have to do and have to fight for. We have to make it so you can't demonize anyone. You can't use anyone as like, I want to call it like, kind of like a lesson to other people. You can't you can't scare the public by taking a person or a group of people that you have dehumanized and then treating them like crap to scare everyone else into like submission. Because this is kind of like, in a way, I feel that what April 5th did do, I'm not sure, but in some ways I wonder, did April 5th did up the ranch in regards to people who were sent to El Salvador and them showing those pictures and them trying to like, show like, oh, we could do that to Americans. Because they keep saying, oh, we wouldn't do that to Americans. But in a way, it's like a wink, wink, but we could do this to you. So you should probably not want to go out on the 19th because we could do this to you. But they're not going to do it to us. But I mean, they're using all these strategies that they have used in the past. And you know what? With that, I'm gonna let you say the last words, Kimberly. And then we're gonna, because I mean, like I said, I'm going
Well,
off on some tangent.
well, you know what? I think that people should definitely engage in nonviolent protest. Be prepared, but engage in nonviolent protest as much as you possibly can. Get into some good trouble. Be loud, make noise. If you see something, don't record it with your phone. Stop it from happening. Put your body on the line. If you want to make change, you need to be scared of what's happening to someone else and not what's happening to you.
So with that, we are going to say good night. And we will talk to you next week.
Have a great one. Thanks, guys.